HamTornado, but now that we're going to see these team comps, I'm liking what I'm seeing from Team Envy, and that's Elivote on that May. A couple weeks ago on Lijiang Tower, Elivote's May absolutely destroyed. Well, again, second generation, we're going to be seeing that ball, that wrecking ball, come out along with some Pharah.
I like this look. This has been a composition that a lot of teams have found success with, and especially against those static comps like the one Team Envy are running, so that explains their very quick retreat back into spawn to swap to something a little bit more beefy. Elivote back on the D.Va, another hero that he's really made a name for himself with, and Crimso on the Moira, interestingly, so that means that he's not going to be as vulnerable to Shadow's hacks here. The second generation might not even get this first point capture.
Yeah, Shadow's actually playing his butt off over the last couple weeks. Definite highlight for second generation. Let's see if that's going to be able to continue here. But no, Team Envy is able to grab the point first off, go get those first percentages, and find themselves at that advantage.
Yeah, this is the kind of inherent compositional advantage you have when you're running goats against any kind of DPS comp. You have a lot of point presence, but Sox now almost 60% to that barrage, along with Shadows as EMP could make a huge difference.
Bipop getting that kill, though, means Team Envy are functioning with one less member, and Elivote doing exactly what Divas are supposed to do. The only one that can really compete with the Pharah in the air, but the defense matrix is going to run out, and Shadows will be getting that DMX, so this is a really good opportunity for second win to get this fight. The Rocket Barrage will seal the deal for them. Not before Team Envy does get about 35% on the board before second generation are able to clean things up, which they haven't done just yet. Not everyone is off the field. Team Envy is actually doing a very good stall right now.
Yeah, Team Envy now just trying to eke out any kind of point percentages that they can get. But Sox now finding those direct rockets. This is really good news because now second generation have a win condition for their subsequent fights. Just continue to rotate those ultimates. You already have EMP on hand. EMP into Minefield could be a big killer. These are all very, beefy, slow-moving tanks that Team Envy are running. But what you really want to do is after you get that EMP, that Minefield out, then you start coming into that barrage. You always have something on hand. Now, EMP does come in. It's only a 3-man, but it doesn't quite matter. Sharp is already out of the fight, but so is Sox. Is this Rezible? Yes! Felty actually manages to find that resurrection, but in the meantime, Bitbop falls.
Oh, and now Team Envy are going to be coming in with all of the kills that they need to compete here. So even though second generation found themselves at an advantageous spot to start things off, Team Envy do not freak out. Something that Team Envy has in spades is grit and determination, and so they're going to come into every fight expecting to win that fight. We do see some of that grit and determination come in, but they do flip the point. Second generation were able to get really close to what Team Envy had on the board, but now they're going to have to try to flip this point again with no ultimates.
Yeah, and they're going to do it with that ultimate economy set to 0, largely big early grab.
Oh, and this is going to be it. Now Team Envy kind of just need to hold on to everything else that they have. The grab is all that they needed, but they did invest the coalescence as well, so they're not going to have that tempo creator, but it might not matter looking at the check marks on second generation side because there are none to look at.
Yeah, Shadows is the closest, but EMP is very much like a grab. It's not a fight ender in and of itself. That throughput damage must be there, and second generation have to weather 2 more big tank ultimates before they can get to that point, especially if Sharp just dies.
Well, you can't get to EMP if you're dead, so it's just going to be passive generation coming into this next fight. So this is a wasted opportunity potentially for second generation, as there might not be a second opportunity for them, as Team Envy getting very close to the 99%. Let's see if overtime will start. It will not, as Team Envy take this and go up 1-0 against second generation. So something that we didn't talk about in the pregame that much is exactly how far apart both of these teams are in the standings, but also and how they've been playing over the weeks, where second generation, very streaky. When Shadows is on Widowmaker, which we're potentially going to see this time around, that's when we really see second generation's best luck.
Yep.
On the other side of things, I actually like Team Envy when they're on Goats a little bit more than anything else. And so do we want Team Envy to just play Goats for the rest of the way, or second generation, hey, why don't we try to push you with some more Shadows Widow rather than meet you with that Goats for Goats?
Second generation, their best look is definitely not trying to match Team Envy at their own game. In this case, though, that game might be the Hammond Carousel, because Team Envy, I am very excited. While they do look much more clean on Goats, there's so many individual moments for these players to shine that we haven't yet. Okay. Or fall, as it were.
Things are just the individual moments, right?
Yes.
And that's not what you would call shining, but Fire is going to go ahead and get that res off, so the players are going to be able to fight each other once again. And look at the ult charge. It looks like Sox, the only contact that he was able to make was against Elivo in the air, who has a pretty good Pharah in his back pocket, but Trill's not going to be there as well. So this is a 65 now for second generation, but Jaru does even it up, gets some really good tickle damage onto the rest of the team as well. Translocates and is the only victim to that biotic grenade that is not going to be available for the rest of second generation for at least a little while longer. Svelty will be getting that res on to Shadows, and this is not an understatement. Shadows is a baller Widowmaker when he is alive on the field, but Team Envy doing what the other teams were able to do is actually keep Shadows down, keeping them a little bit quiet, as Sharp going to show up on this Tracer as well.
Yeah, it takes a high-quality Widowmaker to one-shot a Tracer. She's darting around. Boger getting taken so low. And this is the good news, though. Second generation have eked out a little over 30% for their first cap, but their next engagement is going to be much more difficult. Jaru will have that EMP, Crimzo close to that nano boost. These are all just great ways for Team Envy to control that tempo. Every time second generation come here and try and execute their own plan, they're going to be smacked in the face by some kind of ultimate from Envy. Of course, you can't discount Sharp. Used the Pulse Bomb in the last fight, 70% up to his next one already.
Tracer's so good, particularly at this point in this round on Oasis. The circle around the egg is such a great place for them to play around, dip, dive, dip, and dodge, right? I know I'm missing one of those. So Team Envy now also have that EMP, and that's what they're going to need to potentially hold on at this point. There's one coming the other way as well. 4 versus 5, second generation have 5 members hack. Team Envy a little bit more ready with their EMP, and something you say all the time, if your EMP is reactionary, it's one of the few kind of ultimates where if it goes down second, it's not necessarily always going to be better.
Exactly. EMP requires capitalization, and if you're not expecting the EMP to go down, you might not be in position to put in that damage as a Tracer or as a Reinhardt. So second generation have to try once more, but still Team Envy with options in the bank. Nano and Pulse Bomb still ready. Sharp's already stuck one member of second generation, and with all the swaps onto the tanks, they're going to be even easier to hit.
So Sharp going to be hunting for a good place to stick this Pulse Bomb. The big body on the right is definitely an option, and they're going to go ahead and throw it in, and Lucio is going to be the one that falls down. So Team Envy having 65 at about 72%. Second generation need to reset here. It's not good for them to invest any longer, but now that Sox uses that shield dash and try to protect the Zenyatta, this fight's going to be a little bit longer than second generation needed, and the staggers are incredible here for Team Envy, who are sitting at 85% right now.
BitBop decides to take his own way out. Suicide by Car. And Team Envy right now corralling second gen so well. There's only 7 seconds left here, and they've struggled the entire fight to just set up for the engagement. They might not even have a chance to touch for overtime. Overtime
does commence as locked in with. Well, Team Envy are going to be using that self-destruct to start things off, but it's solo already.
Trill finds 2 with that minefield. That's some crazy value from that Hammond ultimate. Jaru finds that cleanup, and second generation will have to look for answers in our next map on Hybrid.
Yeah, they did not find any on Control, and that's a little bit disheartening for them because Control is where you definitely see the underdog compete a little bit more, as you can kind of throw yourself at these fights over and over again. The strategy around attacking a payload, is not there for Control, and so now that they struggled so far, again, it is disheartening to see, but it's also really good to see Envy clean it up like that, right? So on paper, they're supposed to walk all over this team, right? They're number 1 in the standings versus
undefeated so far.
Undefeated with an insane map win-loss differential. Getting pushed to a 5-game set last week is the weakest they've looked, right? And so now that they're here against second generation, none of that has really been coming into play, and so they've got to be feeling pretty good. And with their last 2 games, I'm actually a little intrigued by how they're going to react when they do get into playoffs, because I believe their last game is against Phase 2 next week. And so going into playoffs, you're potentially not going to be facing any playoff teams in the last 2 weeks of your season. And in terms of preparation, that can be hard for them.
Yeah, that means that you're not going to be pushed to the brink. You're not going to be, 100% tested, potentially, in the last couple of weeks. But on the flip side, that means that you can save all of your juiciest strats for those playoff moments. So we'll see. What does make me feel good about Envy, though, was, you're right, 5-game set last week against NRG, our next combatants in our next series, and they didn't look very clean playing, that GOATS composition that we've praised them for in the past. Now, heading into this next week, heads more clear. They're certainly executing much more cleanly, and that's what you would hope to see regardless of who they're playing.
Exactly, but Second generation were unable to get anything going, and I think they have to rely on shadows, getting those headshots, getting those picks. But I think they are against another team now that are used to dealing with that, right? Because the best teams know who's best at which characters, right? And how do you isolate and make that a weakness, right? When you're not going to have that goats v goats that are really going to compete with Envy, but you do have a monster Widowmaker player on your side, and Envy seems well prepared to deal with that.
Exactly. They didn't even throw any of those, traditional dive characters that we often see close the distance with a Widowmaker. Instead, they kind of came at it with that Tracer Sombra look, right? Hack her, just keep her extremely uncomfortable, constantly on the move. And I really wonder what might have happened if second generation actually stuck with that plan. Because remember, they got about 30% on the city center before they swapped to that goats, a choice that they made themselves, and those tank ultimates do take quite a bit of time to build up, even in the best of circumstances. So as we move into Eichenwald, maybe we'll see a little bit more DPS play because, again, on paper, in theory, GOATS is the most consistent comp in this current patch, 1.32. But, you also have to take into account players' comfort level on different heroes. If Shadows is really feeling that Widowmaker, hey, who's to stop him, right? You could try and build a composition around, just enabling that Widowmaker to find those headshots. And that might be the way forward against Envy.
And so now that they're searching for that X on that treasure map, right, how do we find that map when they're going to be looking for it here on Eichenwald? You say it so well. Do it again.
Eichenwalde.
There it is. and so now that we're going to be seeing these team comps here in just a second, I am expecting Envy to potentially be running goats once again. I do hear the Reinhardt in the background. And then now that the attack is going to be on here in just a second, what do you hope you see from Boger, from second generation?
Hey, Sombra is always a great look. It gives you at least a couple of options. That EMP, again, isn't a fight winner, but it is a pause button. So, Team Envy raring to go with that GOATS composition, potentially not expecting Sox to be on the Sombra here. And what Sox needs to do is find an early hack, find early value, and it's going to be hard to do so when Neat's already out of it. Yeah,
Neat already out of this game. Team Envy have a 65 to attack this point first, and this is looking good for them. And now that Boger is down, Team Envy look like they have an easy 0.8 take, and this has kind of been the issue with second generation. They have to get going, right? You gotta crank that lawnmower a couple times before they do end up being effective. But unfortunately, I think Team Envy is really exacerbating that problem right now.
Exactly. Second generation, a team who is still trying to find that identity against a team who already has, largely solidified that behind their strong tank line. Second generation, again, would really love to have this EMP sooner rather than later. If you're going to dedicate a player to the Sombra rather than a Diva, you want to see that value come through very early on. Otherwise, Team Envy just continue to push through with their superior frontal performance, or the backline, Crimzo fragging out here, and second generation can't really stand.
Yeah, he found himself lying on the ground as Team Envy can continue their momentum on the payload. He flips Havoc Transcendence, and I believe that's the first ultimate that second generation has gotten all match so far, at least here on Eichenwald. Team Envy also